Wow. Let's give Chaplain Green another round of applause. I was about to say amen, Chaplain Green. Now we'll now hear from our keynote speaker, Lieutenant General David Francis. Lieutenant General Francis assumed duties as the Deputy Commanding General, U.S. Army Training and Doctrine Command, Commanding General, United States Army Center for Initial Military Training, located at Joint Base Langley, Eustis, Virginia, on 1 August 2024. He received his regular Army commission in 1987 as a graduate of the Gannon University ROTC training program in Erie, Pennsylvania, and assigned as the aviator. He earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in history and a Master's of Business Administration from Truro University International. He served in a variety of command and staff assignments at every level and has vast experience in all aspects of the Army. Lieutenant General Francis, the floor is now yours.
All right, before I start talking, let's hear from our soldiers on what they think about holistic health and fitness.
H2F to me is it's not just a physical, thing to help you improve your fitness. It's really a whole body, whole life experience. It includes sleep and nutrition and, yeah, of course, the physical part, but it's really about just improving overall soldier health.
We've shifted from a one-size-fits-all physical training regimen that the Army's been used to a more personalized and holistic approach. This shift has definitely encouraged soldiers to take a more proactive role in their health and fitness.
What we need to do as an Army is make sure we can convince all of our soldiers that their performance is reliant on these 5 domains. That it's not just about coming in and PTing hard in the morning. It's about having a holistic lifestyle that makes you a better soldier and a better person and makes our Army more lethal and survivable on the battlefield.
We have to continue to push H2F and its incorporation into our units, no matter how small or large they are, because the proof is in the statistics. We have less injuries, higher ACFT scores, and faster recoveries from injuries, just based off implementing our H2F program in the brigade.
I think we see it most clearly when it manifests in the physical domain, but anecdotally, I will tell you, it's just building healthy life habits with soldiers who are happier, healthier, and ready to accomplish the mission.
Part of H2F is about being a fit-for-life soldier. So that means taking all the domains, sleep readiness, nutritional readiness, spiritual, mental, physical, taking all of those domains and being able to apply them in all aspects of life, whether you stay in the Army, get out of the Army. And as an NCO, I think it's my job to understand all those domains and then help my soldiers be more fit in those domains so that they're ready for anything in life, Army or otherwise.
So yeah, there's never really better testimony than from our soldiers out there. Well, hey, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And General Brown, I want to thank you for asking me to come and do this here today. Although he did say right when I walked up that I sure would hate to follow Chaplain in his opener comments. So that's always a note of encouragement before you come up. But I do want to thank AUSA. I want to thank Bill Green, our Chief of Chaplains, for hosting this AUSA Hot Topics today. And I'm very excited to talk about holistic health and fitness today. And as General Brown mentioned, there's a lot of people in this room that are plank holders that brought this to life over many, many years. And I'll talk about that here in just a second. And finally, sir, we have a dietitian in this audience. I'm sure I will have them link up with your folks for the snacks that you selected for this thing today. So thank you, everybody. But before we get started, I always think it's incredibly important to understand the environment that our operating environment, right? And it's no secret that we are living in a very challenging global security environment today. The challenges with China, the challenges with Russia, with the Israel fight, VEOs are still out there. We have a global security challenge that I won't say unprecedented, but certainly is challenging for us here today. And I will tell you what we're learning from those, especially a recent lessons learned drive we did in Ukraine, is about the effect of large-scale combat operations on soldiers. The Ukrainian soldiers are having to deal with this on a regular basis, and they're in an environment where they are under constant surveillance, where they are under the constant threat of enemy fires, be it artillery, direct fire, drones, whatever those happen to be. And the stress and the casualties they're sustaining are incredible, and things that we haven't seen, numbers that we haven't seen in a long, long time. And so it's in that environment that the Ukrainians are having to deal with. How do we make our soldiers more resilient and able to withstand the challenges of large-scale combat operations? And that is exactly what we are trying to do with holistic health and fitness. But we have another aspect of our environment. So certainly the global security challenges and the environments that our soldiers may enter are significant. And we have to prepare our soldiers to do that in the best way we can. But there's another aspect of our environment that we have to deal with today in our Army, and that is that 77% of our nation can't either physically or mentally qualify to even enter the military service. That's a result of years. In fact, John F. Kennedy saw it coming back in 1960 when he started the Presidential Fitness Challenge for our school-age kids, and unfortunately, that's gone away. And maybe that's something that we can bring back in our nation to help the fitness of our society. But our obesity rates in this nation are higher than they ever been, and they've quadrupled or better since the 1960s. And so it's put us in this epidemic. And of course, as all of you know, that obesity epidemic then leads to other health challenges, cancer, heart disease, and the list goes on. So we're in a health environment that is very challenging as we recruit soldiers, as we bring our civilian citizens in and make soldiers of them. That's a challenge that we absolutely have to deal with, and it's not one that is minor, as is evidenced by the Future Soldier Prep course and the success that that's given us, and not lowering the standard, but bringing folks up to the standard so that they can qualify to serve in our nation's uniform. But it is a challenge that we have to face, and holistic health and fitness is our answer to that. So how do we do that? I'm going to describe to you how we've implemented and how we are implementing holistic health and fitness in our country. But before we do that, I like to use an analogy the Vice likes to use on what our challenge is. Excuse me. So when an athlete trains, say a sprinter, right? There's a training regimen that leads them up to the state finals, right, or the Olympic Games. They have a training regimen that leads them down a road to get to a specific point, a specific time to do a specific thing, right? If you expand that out to a football player, they have a longer periodicity, right? They train, they have an off season, they train, and they got to be ready for 18 games during the regular season, and they have to be at their peak performance throughout that, leading up to the Super Bowl if they're fortunate enough to get there or good enough to get there. For our soldiers, there is no break. We have to maintain a level of readiness, holistic readiness. That's mind, body, spirit, like Chaplain Green was talking about, to face the rigors of large-scale combat operations. And we don't get to pick when and where those things happen. We do have cycles in our deployments and recoveries, but we have to maintain a level of readiness and fitness in our soldiers, that age and range and gender and all sorts of other variables in there that we have to deal with. And our answer to that is holistic health and fitness, a program that has been mentioned, has been in progress for 30 years. It really came out of our special operations forces as we were deploying back-to-back deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan and other places around the world, where we saw the need to say we have to figure out a way to make sure that we are taking care of the whole person, not just the physical domain, but the mental domain, the spiritual domain, and all the other domains that affect all the rest of those. So it's important for us to understand that this has been in progress. The science behind it has been in progress for 30 plus years that led us to the holistic health and fitness program. So what is it? This is our mission statement that you can all see there out of our operating concept. And the bottom line is it is taking care of our greatest asset, our soldier, and it's the Army's largest investment in soldier readiness that we've ever seen. In fact, holistic health and fitness is the largest human optimization performance program ever fielded at scale to do that. And I'll talk about the scale of that active guard and reserve, as well as a lot of other diverse units out there. But it's to produce optimal physical and non-physical performance, reduced injury rates, and improve rehabilitation after injury. These are the foundational things that are important for us to understand. Okay, if we'll go to the next slide here. So why do we think we need this? I described the environment that we're in, but here's some of the statistics. 77% of folks between 17 to 24 unqualified. I already said that. 20% of active component soldiers and 23% reserve guard are considered obese. 52% of active component soldiers sustain a musculoskeletal injury each year. And there's a lot of thought and science behind why we think those things occur. Part of it's the way we conduct training. Part of it is the conditioning, bone density, and a host of other factors that affect that. But it is significant, and it costs us $577 million a year to do that. What holistic health and fitness has enabled us to do is help those folks return to duty faster. 37,000 non-deployable soldiers are due to medical reasons. 14% of soldiers have sleep disorders, and 5% use prescription sleep aids. And if you think about the money we spend, that's not our focus here, but it is a byproduct. If we reduce our non-available rates, we would save more than 1% of our non-available rates. We'd save over $40 million a year. And certainly that is important in today's day and age. So what we're doing is implementing H2F to optimize soldier personal readiness, optimize physical and non-physical readiness, reduce injury rates, rapidly rehabilitate and recondition soldiers following an injury, and improve overall soldier unit morale and effectiveness. And it really gets after what our new Secretary of Defense, what our new Secretary of the Army, the Chief of Staff of the Army, the Vice Chief of Staff of the Army are focused on creating more lethality in our Army. And that all, as Chaplain Green said, that all starts with our soldiers. And this program has already demonstrated its ability to do exactly that. So we go to the next slide here real quick. So just to make sure folks understand what it is, it's our investment. It's our investment in our soldiers. And I would just want to talk for a second about the 5 domains. Most people think about that don't understand the whole system, really think about the physical domain, right? And you saw even a lot of that in the video, but it's much more than that. The physical domain is one of the 5 domains, but you also have the mental or the cognitive domain, the spiritual domain, the sleep domain, and nutrition domain. And I just want to spend a second on the spiritual domain, because I think it's probably one of the most misunderstood of the domains. When people hear spiritual, they think, religion or religious, and that's really not what it is. We all have a spiritual component to ourselves as human beings, and we need to be able to account for that and help soldiers through whatever their spirituality is. Some folks exercise that through the exercise of their religious preference. Others use other means to do that. But the fact that there is a spiritual domain is important for us all to understand. And it really boils down, in my mind, to making sure they have an identity, a purpose, and meaning. We need to understand they have to know their why. That's what makes them tick. What enables them to do the other things that we ask them to do in this arena. And so I think it's very fitting today that Chaplain Green pulled this together. And Bill, thanks for asking me to come and do this here today, because it is so important. And we don't want to, again, the spiritual domain sometimes is misunderstood, but that's really what it's about, is identity, meaning, and making sure that we have that purpose for that individual, right? And there are different ways to get there in the spiritual domain. And our chaplains are probably best equipped, as Bill and I discussed last week, to talk to our soldiers about that, to understand, as they do their ministry to all soldiers, regardless of denomination or no denomination. It's important for us all to understand that aspect of it. And so the spiritual domain is a challenging one to explain and really to implement. But I'll tell you, our chief of chaplains is already moving out in places like 3 Corps where they are looking at different programs to help unit commanders implement this across their formations. And so we appreciate the teamwork from our chaplains corps as we move forward and continue to enhance our ability to look at all aspects of a soldier's being there. Okay, let's go to the next slide. I want to show you some of the return on investment that H2F teams have provided. And the way we did this was when we fielded the initial 27 teams, we compared brigades that had an H2F team with like brigades that did not have an H2F team. And the results were absolutely astounding. And you can see the statistics up here, but increased retention rates and satisfaction, decrease in medical boards, 22% fewer behavioral health profiles, increased utilization of performance professionals, whether they were the strength and conditioning coaches, athletic trainers, PTs, OTs, nutritionists, etc. 26% increase in expert rifle qualifications. And I have to tell you, when I first saw this statistic, I questioned, I pushed back and I said, really, how did you really come to that conclusion? But it really, if you think about it, it makes sense. When we enhance a soldier's performance, they know what they're about. They're getting enough sleep. They're eating right. They feel better. They perform better in all aspects of life, whether it's on the rifle range, at home, with their families. This is a holistic look at a soldier, and satisfaction in what they're doing. They are better prepared for the challenges that life throws at them, whether it's in combat or not. And then when folks are still going to get injured, but when we have fewer injury referrals, it means that we're doing early intervention. We're able to, with our athletic trainers, strength and conditioning coaches, physical therapists, to do early intervention when an injury occurs, get them to the right place in the medical community to help them with that, and then develop a program for them that is in-house and holistic, right? It may not just be a physical thing. It may be a spiritual thing or a cognitive issue, or they may not be getting enough sleep or eating right. But we got a holistic team, and that's the secret sauce of this, is this holistic team together looking at a multidisciplinary approach to solving whatever problem a soldier may have. And the results have been astounding there. We're increasing the pass rates for the ACFT, and we're having 2 times less substance abuse problems in those units. Now that was our initial tranche of brigades that we measured this against. And as we field more brigades, we're working to define how it is that we continue to measure the return on investment of these teams into the future, because we won't have like brigades to compare them to as we field this across the Army. But truly remarkable. And I will tell you, it's this set of ROI, return on investment, that caused the chief of staff of the Army and the vice chief of staff of the Army to say, hey, our initial plan was just to field 111 brigades. And they said, this is good. We need to get this to every aspect of our Army. We need to get this to our dispersed units like recruiting command or cadet command or an MDTF that's spread all over the place. We need to get this to the reserve component. We need to get this to the National Guard, and we need to figure out how to do that. And I'll describe that here in just a second. So let me just talk a little bit about that fielding plan here for just a second. So initially, we were going to field 111 combat brigades by FY30. After this, not only did our chief and vice decide we're going to field this to the whole Army, but they accelerated the fielding. So now we'll field those initial 111 brigades by FY27. And in so doing, we'll set the conditions for the fielding as we study the challenge of how we're going to do this in the Guard and the Reserve. The other thing we did was we assigned an H2F team by a brigade size element. Well, we have a lot of units out there that have a brigade that's less than 1,000 people. So we're going to pull and aggregate some of those smaller units together and put an H2F team on top of that called an H2F area support team that will enable us to get to everybody out there. So that's going to be an important part of this as well. So when we talk about the guard and the reserve, so it's critically important that we figure out how to get this out there. Now, it can't look the same, right? Because you might have a guard brigade that's got companies in 4 different states. And so we are executing pilots in FY 26 and 27 with the guard and the reserve to study the best way to deliver H2F's capability to our guard and reserve units as well. It won't exactly be the same, but we're figuring out the best way to do that. And I've talked to General Stubbs and Lieutenant General Harder, who's here today. Bob, good to see you here, and to figure out what is the optimal way to deliver this capability. And it will mean that we have to do probably some things differently. And I'll talk about some of the initiatives that we see that are going to help with that process here in just a moment as well. Currently, we have 50 brigades fielded. By the end of 25, we'll be up to 71. So we'll field 21 teams this year. And then we'll continue up through the 111 brigades by 27 and do the pilots in the Guard and Reserve in 26 and 27 as we flesh out what it looks like for the Guard and Reserve into the future. But we'll continue to field those units. But the area support team is probably our best way to service dispersed units or multiple small units as we continue this process. So let me go to the next slide here. We can. Okay. Some of the things that we're working on right now. So we have a couple of things ongoing right now, not up here, but I want to talk about it because it's important, is the H2F integrator course. So while we are in the process of fielding, we don't want our units that don't have a team yet to wait. We have the doctrine published. We have facilities identified. We have equipment. Our H2F integrators are, if you think of what we used to call a master fitness trainer, we've actually discontinued that course, and we're now delivering the H2F integrator course. And what it does is it gives young NCOs or officers the education on all of the domains and what resources are available on their installations to begin these programs now. And we've had some very good success stories out there with units that don't have a team yet that have begun this process, right? So folks don't want to wait because the doctrine's published. We have ATPs published that talk about how we execute this in our formations, and units are moving out even prior to having a team. It will be better when they have the team there, but we don't have to wait to do that. We can start that now. And already in the Guard and Reserve, they're already executing their own internal looks at what is the best way to do this, and that'll inform our requirement moving forward. The H2F advisor course is in development right now. That is to give more training to help a commander best employ their H2F team in accordance with the life cycle of that unit, whether they're pre-deployment, deploying, recovery, or whatever other mission we expect them to do. That H2F advisor will be more fully trained in all aspects of all domains and be able to best advise the commander to employ that team. Okay. The next piece is, and this one I'm very excited about as well, and that's the H2F data management system. So we are in the process right now of working a requirement through the Army acquisition process, and we hope to publish that as soon as possible, probably later this year, to go out to industry. And key to success, especially with our dispersed units, is going to be the ability for us to collect data so that they can have a meaningful discussion with an H2F team. And if they're not co-located with an H2F team, this will make that much better. It will be independent of wearables initially, but the requirement will enable us to plug in wearables if the Army decides to go that way, or potentially a bring your own qualified device and be able to plug that into the system as well. So there's lots of potential here, and we really think this is going to be key both for individual development. Anybody that uses a wearable is already changing behavior, right? You're looking at your sleep score every day. You're looking at what you eat. You're looking at your heart rate. You're looking at your physical exercise. It helps an individual be accountable, and so I think it's a great thing. We're doing a wearable study right now at Fort Moore with basic trainees. just to take a look at, is that data helpful for the individual? Is that data helpful for a command? Is it helpful for us in the initial training enterprise to say we could do some things differently to enhance performance of our soldiers coming out? Because at the end of the day, again, what all this is about is increasing the readiness of our soldiers as we go out there. So we are working on that problem set right now, and we'll be reaching out to industry certainly to help us to solve that. We know there's a lot of great solutions already out there, and we're just working on what the requirement looks like to make sure that we're making it so that it's accessible and useful to our soldiers and our commanders out there. And of course, how we handle the data is paramount in that discussion. And then lastly, our pregnancy and postpartum performance training is something that we really walked away from for a while, and we have now brought it back, and we're out training P3T at installations all over the globe. It's in high demand, and we're getting some really good feedback from our soldiers out there and our leaders that are executing those programs. And let me just finally say this, and you kind of saw it in the video. We just completed a survey of almost 17,000 soldiers, and that's who responded. 17,000 responses on what soldiers' reaction to holistic health and fitness is. And I will tell you that there's a lot of negative things out there, but what you don't see are negative things about holistic health and fitness. The H2F teams, those that have them, and the Army's investment in our soldiers. Our senior leaders put their money where their mouth is, and they are delivering this capability to our Army. It's going to make us more fit. It's going to make us more ready. It's going to help the whole person. And a byproduct of that is helping families. A byproduct that is increasing performance, lethality, and what we expect our soldiers to do. So we're very excited about this. We're excited that we're getting to accelerate this program. We're excited about the response that our units are giving us in terms of the effectiveness of these programs and the H2F teams that we're putting on the ground inside brigades. And I think our growing challenge at the end of the day will end up being facilities, right? So we want to have an H2F facility for every brigade out there. Of course, that's not. So we're looking at options for how we, a lot of installations, really installation by installation right now, are taking a look at their facilities. They're converting facilities. Some are converting schools. Some are converting existing gyms into these H2F facilities to enable the team to be resident, to be co-located, and to do that holistic look with our units as they go through the H2F teams. And so that's a challenge we'll continue to look at as we move into the future. So lots of challenges with the continued implementation, but I will tell you, we have our senior leaders in the United States Army that absolutely believe in this and are committed to fielding this across the Army. So with that, I'll stop there. We do have a lot of experts in the room, and I'll be happy to take your questions. Thank you very much.
Sir, if it's okay, I'll kick things off.
Sure.
You talked about reserve and guard units. You also talked about the industry. There are a number of key industry leaders here in the room today. So my question is this: what are the challenges of implementing the H2F model among reserve and guard units, and how might industry help solve those challenges?
Yeah, well, I think so. There's a couple things, right? There's the obvious question of dispersion, right? So our guard units are dispersed in every state. Our reserve units are dispersed in every state. And so while we can't necessarily get a team to every individual location, how do we think about the best way to deliver that capability? Is it a centralized team enabled by a data management system that allows those dispersed units to communicate back to the expertise to help them build a personal training plan, or get them to a resource that helps them in the spiritual domain, or the nutrition domain, or the sleep domain, or the cognitive domain? So what's the best way to deliver that capability to a widely dispersed organization? It's not just the Guard and Reserve, right? So if you think of recruiting command at hundreds of locations across the United States, or cadet command at hundreds of schools across the United States, So there may be some partnering with schools. There may be some partnering with local fitness organizations. There may be certainly the data management system, the H2F integrator are all things that we're looking at to help cover the gap that we'll experience with the Guard and Reserve. And so we're working with the Guard, General Harder, General Stubbs on what is the best way to deliver that capability to those units. We don't have all those questions solved yet, but those are the kinds of things that we're working on in order to get us there.
So I have a question. My name is Carolyn Moose. I'm a former professional athlete. I'm in the health and fitness space. My question is, I'll preface this by saying I greatly appreciate this program and appreciate what will be implemented. To the extent that wearables will be mandatory, what legal aspects are involved in making it mandatory? And of course, it's essential for obtaining metrics for provable impact.
Yeah. So first of all, wearables are not mandatory. We are doing pilots with wearables right now to look at the value to the individual and the value to unit leaders in doing that. As I mentioned, the biggest challenge with that is how we manage the data, protect data, anonymize the data, certainly so that it is used properly, and that is to enhance the performance of the individual and units. How we manage that data is going to be paramount to making sure that we're protecting people's privacy. At the same time, we're giving the data that is required by leaders at echelon to evaluate the health of their unit and the readiness of their unit to do that. So those are some of there'll be some policy issues that go with our ability to use wearables right now. So for the pilots, we have permission to do that in closed networks that allow us to execute that. And there are some various pilots going on right now that'll all inform the requirement that we are putting forward as we speak right now.
Good morning, General Todd South, Army Times. I have a question regarding the spiritual dimension, which obviously is the focus today. A lot of the fitness and the sleep, it's easy to track. You have wearables, you have numbers. What are some of the challenges and opportunities in expressing some of the data that you can show with the spiritual dimension?
Yeah.
For stakeholders.
Thanks for the question, Todd. And that's a great question. And I'll tell you, and I'll ask Chaplain Green we had this discussion last week. How do you measure the effectiveness of how we're doing in the spiritual domain? Our Chief of Chaplain's office right now is looking at what are some measurable criteria we can put in place to help us evaluate that. And they're experimenting with that out in 3 Corps right now to help do that. And I will tell you that again, this is a tough one to solve. What are the metrics? It's pretty easy. We measure physical domain with the ACFT. You can measure what you eat. You can measure how many hours you sleep. The spiritual domain is tougher to measure. And so our magnificent Chief of Chaplains Corps is helping us to try to put some very broad criteria in place, at least to help us to understand how are we doing? Are we delivering what our soldiers need in the spiritual domain, however it is that they choose to exercise that, and giving them the resources they need to find that identity, purpose, and meaning in life. And so those are some of the things that they're working on right now. So we're working with that. We don't have the answers yet, but we're working on how do we measure that particular domain.
Good morning, sir. I'm Major Brent Call from Fort Wainwright, Alaska. I'm an injury control director for our brigade. My question is in regards to the division positions that are opening. Most of the focus has been on the brigade level. And you mentioned the area support teams. I'm just wondering, how can the division level support some of these teams and all these efforts?
So we aren't resourcing positions at the division. However, I will tell you that every division, I've talked to every division commander out there, and divisions are putting that in different places, right? Some are using their division surgeon to do that. Some are using other folks to do that. But again, our focus is down and in, and where we're finding it most effective. We don't want to bring this up. We don't want to raise the level of how we're executing this to too high of a level. What we came to is the brigade level is the appropriate echelon to manage the H2F teams, because that brigade commander has the ability to dictate and direct how that team what that team is doing to prepare them for whatever is next on their schedule, pre-deployment, deployment, post-deployment, or maybe they're going to do mountain training, maybe they're going to do desert training. So the brigade commander is the best place to adjust what the H2F team is focused on for their unit and where their unit is in his or her assessment, to direct that team. If we bring it up too high, it'll lose that fidelity, and we don't want to do that. So we're not resourcing this at the division level. Division commanders are looking at different metrics on how to measure, how to look at, everything from injury rates to non-deployability rates to other issues that are going on. I think that's how division commanders are taking a look at this and looking at the results of having an H2F team. And then, I'm sure with a discussion with their brigade commanders, they talk about that, but the brigade is the right echelon, we think, to execute the holistic health and fitness team. Thanks, though. Thanks for coming from Alaska. I don't know how you got away with that, but.
Good morning, sir. Dr. Demetrius Walton, Dollarnet. We created an H2F app that puts it in the hands of every soldier. But our question is, how do we get to the senior decision maker so that this gets used by the whole Army?
Yeah, it's our acquisition process, right? So we develop the requirement, and as it goes through the process, when appropriate, it'll be sent out as an RFI request, for information from industry to come up and bring us your solution to the problem, and then we'll choose from there and it'll go on. So that's the process by which we pull those programs in. Yep.
Sir, Dan Overspike. I love this program. I wish we'd have it when I was in. As Brigadier General Tahan spoke last year about the predominance of injuries that our soldiers experience are MSK, like 83%, and the benefit of rapid access to physical therapy. When I looked at the area support team for the Compo 2, Compo 3 op board, I didn't see PT in there. Can you just talk a little bit about how you're thinking about that sort of rapid access?
Yeah. Again, we're in the process of figuring that out, right? So the reason you don't see that is just there's a manning issue with, whether you have green suiters doing it or you have a contract solution or a GS solution to that problem. We have to figure out what that right mix is. I think what we'll also explore is, part of the, in the PT aspect of it is, how do you get to that access to care immediately? So you might get some advisement from a centralized team, but then we're going to have to rely on local medical capability where these folks are, I think, to do that. So we're still working through that particular challenge. But I think getting that advice right up front is going to be helpful to folks that saying, yeah, you don't want to walk on that for 2 more weeks. Go get an X-ray or go get evaluated, right, by a medical professional. That's the kind of thing I think will be most beneficial is, you aren't walking this off. Go get checked out. Something's not right. And then I think that will assist in those areas. And that could be Guard, Reserve, Recruiting Command, et cetera, all those dispersed units. So I think part of our challenge will be, how do we get them access to that as quickly as possible to gain the benefits of holistic health and fitness.
Morning, sir.
Morning.
Mark Childress. I work for the Vice Chief of Naval Operations. Navy is following suit with the Army. We've seen your success. I think the Navy looks at it from a stress and fatigue perspective while deployed downrange. The ship with the Arabian Gulf issues that we're having now with management of ship operations. Going all the way back to its inception, what was the watershed moment that senior leadership saw that this was something that wasn't only PT, and what convinced senior leadership to take it to where it is now?
Yeah. Well, great question. I don't know that there was a watershed moment. I think this is something that has developed over time, and we recognize that, hey, just because you're physically fit doesn't mean all the other aspects of your life are okay. Just because you get enough sleep doesn't mean that in other words, these are all interdependent domains, which is how we came up with this thing over time, right? So I don't know that it was a watershed moment, but I got to brief the Vice Chief of Naval Operations on this program about 2 months ago. And, but what I would tell you is that what we look at in terms of the Army, in terms of the stressors of large scale combat operations, you guys endure on a daily basis on a ship, in the in the Red Sea, particularly, your sailors are seeing the same types of stressors, constant surveillance, constant threat of indirect drones, unmanned sea vessels and other things. So we are certainly in a challenging time, and our U.S. Navy is certainly in a challenging time from a threat perspective as well. And so, in my view, all of the aspects of all of the domains of H2F would certainly apply to the Navy. They apply to any service as far as I'm concerned. And so it's not just the stress or the fatigue, right? That certainly you deal with that on a ship. You guys work crazy shifts and all of those things, but you got to look at the holistic piece, because human beings are human beings, and we've learned over time that addressing all of these components simultaneously and in a cohesive fashion has produced better results than just any one of those domains at a time.
I want to double or second that. I really appreciate that this program is being implemented. My question is, what role, if any, does mindfulness and emotional regulation play in the cycle of holistic?
Yeah, certainly, mindfulness has been around our Army for quite a while in different spaces, and folks, different champions of that. But that, again, that can be part of how someone chooses to develop themselves in the spiritual domain, helping them to be mindful, to be present in the moment, to look at their identity and their purpose and their meaning, right? And so that's a tool. Mindfulness is a tool that I think is applicable in the spiritual domain, as soldiers, sailors choose to employ that technique in their spiritual domain. So that's certainly a tool available to our soldiers as well.
How about a hand for General Francis? Fantastic talk.